will probably hear the noise, so that is totally normal. So welcome again to today's session. Today we have 90 minutes until 4:30 p.m. Brussels time. This is a questions and answers session with a very special guest. We invited Matthew Baldwin, the Deputy Director General of DG Move and Mission Manager for the area of climate neutral and smart cities. And he's here today to present us the call for expression of interest for the 100 climate neutral cities. Matthew, welcome. We have plenty of cities connected today. Some of them also renamed themselves with the name of the cities where they're from. We have cities from all across Europe. Most of them come from the Horizon 2020 Lighthouse Projects group, but some of them are also members of Energy Cities, and there are many members also of the task group Replication. So in a second, I will give you the floor to start your presentation, and I will also share your slides. So just to let participants know that this session will start with the first presentation of the call for expression of interest, and then we will continue with the questions and answers session, and we will have about 1 hour for that. So I think that is all from my side. Thank you again, Muriel, for supporting me for this organization. And Matthew, the space is yours. I can also spotlight you for all the other participants. Yeah, and maybe, and I can start sharing your slides as well.
Well, thank you so much, Sophia. Thanks, Muriel, also for everything you've done. You put me in such a good mood with that music. And thank you so much for not playing some ghastly medley involving Santa, reindeers, or snow. I mean, that was, yeah, not fond of all that, but that was very nice. And greetings to everybody. Nice to see so many familiar names and faces, which is lovely in one respect, but in another respect, I fear I might be about to tell you a bunch of stuff you already know. So in the true spirit of Christmas, if you would not like to hear the standard presentation on the EU climate neutral and smart cities mission, now's a great time to speak up and say, no, can we just go straight to question and answer? Does anyone have strong views? Have you all heard it before? Have you been joining all our constant webinars? Speak yes. Now, or you're going to get the presentation. That was just somebody leaving.
No, more people joining all the time.
All right. Well, I don't hear anyone crying for mercy. Putting you in a difficult spot, I guess. In any case, all right. Well, I'll rattle through it, and then you can say, okay. So there's a positive vote from Skopje. Thank you, Lovren. But by the same token, I'll try to go reasonably quickly. And if you'd like me to pause at any point, just say, hang on a minute, that wasn't clear, or repeat. Welcome then, everybody, to yet another presentation on the EU Climate Neutral and Smart Cities mission. We do seem to be touching a nerve in that we've got a lot of people interested, and that's terrific. And it's terrific because we've got a big deadline. That's the first thing I want to stress to you, that by the 31st of January, we want to hear from your city whether you're joining the call for expression of interest. That's the deadline, and I'll go through all of that, but please lodge that in your minds. Next slide, please. I know you all work on this stuff, so really I can skip quickly over these issues. Why do we need a mission on climate neutral cities? I will spare you the long speech about climate change and the existential challenge that we are fighting, although it's all true. And when you think about what cities can deliver, it's the potential that they have to drive this forward that is the thrust of our mission. 75% of us live in cities. That's going to go up to about 85% by 2050. More than 70% of global CO2 emissions come from cities. But what I call the miracle of action against climate change, sorry, back to the previous slide, if you wouldn't mind, Sophia, thanks. What I call the miracle about action about climate change is when we act to reduce our greenhouse gases, particularly in cities, we pull down all these fabulous co-benefits: lower air and noise pollution, less congestion, fewer road deaths, lower energy bills, better energy security. We get the lovable and livable cities. I'm misspelling one of those two words and I can't work out which one. but I think you know what I'm talking about, and that's what you are pushing for as well in everything you've been doing. And coming out of Glasgow, I was very struck, having been doing my traveling salesman routine with so many different mayors from across Glasgow. I'm sure we met there, many of you there, that the negotiations are going on at the global level and at the nation state level, but where we're acting on the European Green Deal, where we're going to deliver on these commitments on climate change, is going to be at the local level, particularly in cities and regions. And a cliche alert, or it feels like a cliche because I've said it so many times, cities are where policies, particularly on the Green Deal, meet people. They meet the, I've seen the slides have disappeared off the screen. Thank you, they're back. Cities are where mayors interact with people who, yes, I've got them back, thanks. Where mayors talk to people who don't want to give up their cars, who don't want to go through the hassle and the expense of refurbishing their apartments. And that's where, if you like, the rubber meets the road, and cities are in the front line in terms of persuading people to do some of these necessary things. And talking to so many different cities now, I hear very loud and clear that many of you have the ambition to go further and faster than your existing plans. We still have relatively few that have declared publicly their ambitions to be climate neutral by 2030. Why is very often we hear from you different barriers that you face. And this mission is all about helping you knock down those barriers and reformulate your plans. It's a bottom-up mission driven by innovation to enable you to get there. Next slide, please. To that end, I always think it's important when you act at European level to be super clear about what you're trying to achieve. And here we have two concrete objectives, and we are aiming to do what it says on the tin. Firstly, to deliver at least 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. But secondly, to ensure that these cities act as experimentation, as innovation hubs, to engage in a collective learning experience, to put all European cities in the position to be climate neutral by 2050. And the interplay between those two objectives is, I think, going to be very instructive as to how we take it forward now. We want to find 100 very representative cities from north, south, east, and west in Europe. At the same time, we want to make sure that these first group of cities lay the ground, prepare the ground for all cities to get there by 2050. Next slide, please, Sophia. And here are the main elements of the mission. Sorry, my phone is beeping like crazy. The main elements of the mission, I won't talk about all of these. Highlighted in green are the two central elements, and I will spend some time on both of those. But all of these elements will be critical in terms of getting us to success. Next slide, please. And let's begin with the climate city contracts, which we are using as the central tool. The cities we invite to join our mission, once again, that deadline, 31st of January, 2022, I'll keep repeating it. And we'll be choosing, we hope, the missions by March, the cities to join the mission by March. We will then invite the first group of cities, probably between 25 and 30 from that hot 100, to start working on these climate city contracts. And what are they? They're tailor-made plans on how to reach climate neutrality, adapted to the individual needs of a city, supported by the mission platform, on which more in a moment, but you'll be glad to hear that Energy Cities is one of the key players in it. These are, some people say to me, what are these contracts? Are these legally binding contracts? Are they commercial contracts? Neither. They are best seen as memorandums of understanding, which the city is going to be signing, to be co-created in a spirit of multi-level governance, crucially with the involvement of national authorities, of regions, local stakeholders, including, of course, citizens, but also local economic actors from the private sector, from the local finance community. And what's clear to me from talking to cities who are going for this already is how much they need to innovate in terms of their city governance, pulling everything together into one central operation to achieve climate neutrality, putting together crucially an investment plan. This will be where the city sets out what it's going to do and how much it's going to cost. And again, the mission platform is there to help you with both elements of this, and of course the necessary monitoring and reporting. And once again, This is where the city makes its commitment to climate neutrality by 2030, and it should be signed by the mayor or the equivalent. Next slide, please. I think we skipped, that's it. No, one more forward. Yeah, the benefits. Why should your city do this? You're already probably engaged in a number of different European programs. Well, here's our list of persuaders. Firstly, again, it's this bottom-up, place-based innovation, tailor-made assistance and advice from the mission platform, who will help you to create these climate city contracts. The cities that sign these contracts will benefit from what we're calling the mission label. This will be your badge. Maybe it'll be a literal badge that you can wear that says my city has got a bona fide certified plan to get to climate neutrality by 2030. We think this will help unlock funds from things like the structural funds, from the Recovery and Resilience Facility, the big post-COVID bazooka that the Commission has fired off, and there may well need to be successor big funding packages. The mission label will help you draw down funds from these sources and others within the European Union and nationally. But we also think it'll be crucial in terms of your passport to talking to the private sector in finance terms. We're already working closely with the European Investment Bank, excuse me. And the mission label will again show the private finance community that's looking desperately for climate neutral projects to invest in. And here you will be able to say, I've got a plan, it's accepted and certified, if you like, by the European Commission. We need your money and your help. Third point, research and innovation. This is coming out of Horizon Europe with a good dollop of Horizon Europe money. There will be funding opportunities throughout the mission for cities to be part of big innovation actions. There'll be deep demonstrators launched by the mission platform, and your city can be part of those. We will help you and help member states develop national coordination networks to support the cities in their endeavors. Excuse me, slides have disappeared again, but they may be just taking a break. They're back. And these national networks, we think, will be crucial. Cities should not feel they're having to do this on their own. Indeed, the networking opportunities, the learning and exchange of experience between cities, I think will be the most vital. I think it was it may well have been in the last meeting I was at Energy Cities, where the cities said, we learn best from each other. That's absolutely right. You don't learn best from the Commission telling you what to do, but from your shared experiences between each other. And your shared experiences also in terms of involving citizens in decision-making. Again, we're not going to tell you how to do this, but it's very clear from the cities that are succeeding in this, that they're working closely with their citizens. The original mission board report was entitled By and For the Citizens. If the citizens feel this thing is being done to them, it won't work. And last but not least, the cities that participate in this program will be, we think, seen as national and European leaders on climate change. They will have high visibility. They will be in a strong position to attract investment and highly skilled workers to drive the whole project forward. Next slide, please. Funding and financing, I'll try to speed up. I said I was going to go fast and I've just talked fast. But we will be looking to bring in support from a variety of different EU funding programs. I've mentioned already the cooperation with the European Investment Bank and private investors. We're also looking to interact with the new EU Sustainable Finance Agenda, which is intriguing, whether it is developing blending facilities for public and private partnerships or green city bonds. We hope all of the expertise and advice will come together under one roof to provide cities with that information. Next slide, please. Again, not replacing involvement in other programs. Many of you are involved, I know, with the Covenant of the Mayors or increasingly with the Climate Pact, but building synergies with them. We're going to be using the methodologies accepted by the Covenant of the Mayors and inviting you to build on the existing target you've expressed through CCAPs. You will be able to develop your sustainable urban mobility plans under our new urban mobility framework and use those as well in the context of the city's mission. I mentioned the mission label. We think that'll be crucial in terms of helping generate those synergies. And I also mentioned the national networks. Next slide, please. You're getting to the nuts and bolts of it. So there are just two qualifying criteria for to be concerned about. One is a population threshold, which we've set at 50,000. Someone's got a cough and an open microphone.
Yeah.
Get well soon.
Please remember to mute yourself if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. But we've got some flexibility to bring in cities from all member states. If you see at the bottom, the cities coming from countries with less than 5 cities of more than 100,000, and I saw our friends from Riga there. Cities from Latvia can express their interest if they've more than 10,000 inhabitants. Happily, of course, Riga comfortably meets those population thresholds, but this will enable cities from smaller member states to participate. It'll also enable us to test the concept for those smaller cities of between 10 and 50,000 people. So the population threshold is the first qualifying criterion. The second is the stated ambition, not the commitment at this stage, but the ambition from the political level to achieve climate neutrality by 2030. I've mentioned it already, but we're absolutely determined to get inclusivity, to have diversity, geographical balance in this mission. We want to have at least one city from each member state. And so we're now chasing after some of the member states where we are not hearing such loud interest from the cities. But this is very important, and it's very important in the overall context of climate change, because we know that there are a number of Scandinavian cities with well-elaborated plans to be climate neutral. The concept works just as well in the south and the east of Europe. We're hearing from Spanish cities, Greek cities, Romanian cities, Bulgarian cities that they too can achieve these things. And I saw some friends from Marseille on the call. I had a wonderful conversation with the mayor of Marseille, who really set out the strong ambition of Marseille to achieve this. I don't think many people necessarily outside there would be associating Marseille with climate neutrality, but the determination and the clarity of their plans is something for me to behold. So these are the assessment criteria, is really about the level of ambition. We want to know how prepared you are, but not in the beauty contest sense. We want to make sure we're getting a mixture of prepared and less prepared cities. And once again, true geographic diversity. We also want to hear from cities, if you've got plans already, about how you're planning to involve citizens and stakeholders. But you should see this call for expression of interest as the Commission trying to gather as much information with our partners in the consortium, the Net Zero Cities Consortium, so that we can we start from a good place in understanding which cities we're working with and where they've all got to. So based on an assessment by independent experts and through our agency Synergies, we in the Commission services will then choose the 100 cities in February and March, and all the indications is that we're going to have a very difficult task. Next slide, please. So the nuts and bolts of how it's all going to work. We launched the call for expression of interest on the 25th of November. The deadline, once again, is the 31st of January, 2022. We will then be selecting the cities. We hope we're setting ourselves the target of March for that, and to enable the mission platform, the Net Zero Cities Consortium, to begin work from the middle of next year on the first climate city contracts. Next slide, please. There's a little screenshot of the questionnaire. It's an online questionnaire which we ask the city authorities to fill out. It constitutes the city's explicit request to join the mission. There is a place in there for where you can signal that your mayor has him or herself expressing the political interest, the political ambition to join the mission. And don't hang around, because we've got more than 200 cities. I think it's getting up to 250 now, but Vivka may have the precise figure, who have pre-registered to receive information about the call. Many of you will be on this call, but we are very encouraged by the strength of the response that we've received. Next slide, please. Here are 3 webinars that we've just had. I'm afraid you missed them if you wanted to participate in them live, where we walked through different aspects of the questionnaire. There you see posted already one of the recordings we made of the first webinar, and the other two will be posted on our website very soon. Thanks, Vivka, for letting us know. We've 230 pre-registrations for the call now. And these sessions, probably because I wasn't there, were apparently very successful in terms of unpacking some of the details. And you might well find it an efficient way to get the answer to your question by watching the relevant part of the webinars there. Next slide, please. And if not, here are some links where you can register and respond to the call. You can get hold of our dynamic and fascinating newsletter. The new one's just out. You can send us directly the questions that you have in relation to the mission if you can't find your answer elsewhere. And you can also look at our webpage right at the bottom, and that's where you will also find, I think as of today, an updated frequently asked questions, which we have well over 100 questions we're trying to answer there. The devil lies very much in the detail, and we're giving you the detailed answers in those FAQs. But in any case, if there's something you haven't spotted in these FAQs or in these webinars, let us know. And indeed, now will be a good moment to come back and ask us questions if you still have them. I think I've ground my way to the end, Sophia. Thank you very much.
You did. Thank you very much. Maybe I will spotlight you. So yeah.
I think that would be kind to the other participants.
Exactly. So now you can also push the button on view on the top right corner and put on gallery, so you can see all the participants. So I think, thank you again. Thank you a lot, Matthew. And also welcome to all of those of the participants who joined us just a few minutes ago. I think that now we can open the space for questions, the real purpose of this session. So I would like to remind participants that you can raise your hand by using the tool that is in the reaction button on the bottom bar of your screen, and you can click on raise hand, and we will record it and give you the floor, or you can also ask questions in the chat. So let me see if there are already some questions.
I see a couple already.
Okay,
so we can plan it.
Great. I also asked Muriel to intervene if she wants to.
Well, same for Vivka. If you hear me say something stupid or I miss something.
Right.
Vivka Pankauka, who's on the call with us today. So some questions I see. The easy one first. Can we share the slides through you, Sophia? Yes, please.
Yes, please.
And
yeah,
indeed, participants who are unable to join for whatever reason, please do share the slides. That's absolutely great. Question from Andy. What happens if cities end up not meeting the goal by 2030? Well, I can reassure you, we will not be suing the pants off your city. Once again, it's not a legal commitment. It's not a commercial commitment. It may well be that cities missed their ultimate goals by a few percent. I don't know. The point is that I think if we get 100 cities that are working through this, all of them will get a lot closer to the targets than if they hadn't participated. And the cities that are working on these things for many years, like Leuven just down the road, will tell you it's often you learn most from the mistakes that you've made along the way, and sharing of those mistakes that enables you to get there. So there are precisely no consequences. Of course, we very much hope that cities will get there. I think very much the sense is that the learning is accelerating. The unpacking the issues around governance, unpacking some of the technical issues around energy distribution, around local energy grids, what we need to do in terms of our local mobility. All of these issues are becoming better known, enabling cities to accelerate, I think, towards the targets. I did see another question earlier on. I can't find.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the support national coordination networks. Christina's question. How will this be organized? Well, some of those networks exist already. There's a great network in Sweden called Viable Cities. There's a strong network in Spain called 20 Cities, CITI capital ES 2030. And And the interesting thing about those networks is that viable cities have been around for around 5 years, and the Cities 2030 just for a year. And they've already been very effective at helping cities understand the challenges around climate neutrality and providing a support network for them. And in both cases, attracting then strong support from the national authorities for what they're doing. We've got a call, a separate call, which is now closed, is under assessment, to help develop those national networks. So we'll be doing that in parallel with the work on the under the mission platform. And there are strong signs that national authorities are very happy to help build these national networks. I hope that's a reasonable answer to your question.
I can see some
you call them
hands
out,
raised, and there are also some other questions in the chat. I will read this question from Oriol, and then maybe we can also give the floor to Andy, who really wanted to ask the question directly. So yep. Let me just read this question. So the climate city contract could be referring to a specific territorial area of the city, our local flagship climate living lab, for instance, or should necessarily encompass the entire city geographical area?
Great question. We are encouraging cities to encompass the entire city, if that's possible, but we're also trying to be realistic, and we recognize that in a number of cities there will be a part of the city which cannot get to climate neutrality by 2030. It might have the port that part of the city, or there might be a district with some heavy industry which is particularly difficult to decarbonize by 2030. What we're asking cities to do in their expression of interest is to spell out if there are parts of the city that they're pretty sure they can't deliver on, and then to start to explain to us the timetable by which cities, the whole city, these residual parts of the city, would be climate neutral. This is an acceptable way forward. Some larger cities in particular are saying, well, we can probably only do it for a few districts. And then we'll be ready to take a look at that. Again, the more the better. It needs to be logical in terms of the city that the parts of the city that you're bringing forward for climate neutrality. One large city said we can only do it just for a couple of districts of around 5,000 people, and I said I think that's not even closely enough to be able to test the concept. And I'm pleased to say that city's come back with much stronger plans now. But we are looking for cities large and small to try to commit as much as possible to join the mission, because that will be the most meaningful experience in terms of the learning and the innovation. And I think it'll also be the biggest contribution thereby to the European Green Deal.
Thank you, Matthew, again. I will then give the floor to Andy. So Andy, please unmute yourself. Where it's yours.
Yes, hi. Thanks so much for the presentation.
Hi, Andy.
Yeah, following question. Would it be welcomed to achieve carbon neutrality indirectly? For example, in Sestao, there's a very high density of population. So for example, there's lack of surface area, let's say for photovoltaics, etc. However, if corporations, if SMEs, if citizens, if they were to, for example, invest in photovoltaics or wind turbines outside of the territory of the city itself, would that be like if they were to calculate what's their carbon footprint, but through the investment that would you invest in PVs and wind turbines, would that compensation be okay? Is the question clear? Or
it's a very interesting idea. What you're talking about is private initiative offsetting, essentially, and a different way to lower the overall carbon calculation. I mean, we are open to offsetting. We think it's unrealistic to expect cities not to do any offsetting at all. We do need to be cautious about that. Our colleagues in DG Klima are keen to insist that it shouldn't be, in any case, more than 20%, and that very much is up to 20%. And we're also looking for offsetting projects to be of the highest possible standards. There can't be greenwashing involved in this project. But at the same time, we're only asking cities to look at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. That is, if you like, the direct emissions from electricity generation, the indirect emissions as well that come from heating and cooling. We're not asking cities to address all the, what I call the behavioral type emissions linked to scope 3. For example, if I use my phone in the city and that triggers a carbon charge outside the city, how do we start measuring and capturing that? We're not asking cities to include that in their 2030 elimination target. We are interested in measuring it back to the spirit of the mission as an innovation tool. Many cities are interested in measuring and capturing and ultimately reducing those scope 3 emissions. But we think it's too demanding to ask all of our cities to eliminate them by 2030. Except in one area, which is waste, because obviously if you take your waste and you find an easy way to take it outside the city boundaries, with one bound, you're free. So we will ask cities to include scope 3 waste emissions in their overall calculations. But it's a long way of saying, Andy, your idea sounds interesting. Another response to your question is, there are many different ways of achieving this climate neutrality, and we are trying not to set too many fierce upfront rules for how it's achieved. Again, it's an innovation project, and we will all learn more the more different ways we try to achieve it. I'd need to take advice from wiser and more experienced people as to the precise ideas that you have, but it sounds very interesting to me.
Thank you.
Okay, then I have another question. This is Muriel speaking. It's from Inga. Hi. From Inga Barisa. She asks, do I understand correctly that the City Council would be encouraged to produce an official council resolution confirming mission targets in order to join the mission?
You're open to do that, Inga, as one possibility. And it really depends on your city as to how you're governed, as to the precise nature of the statement that you make in the call. For us, it would be fine to have even a short document which is signed by the mayor or equivalent to say that she or he is expressing the interest on behalf of the city to join the mission, and expressing the ambition to get to climate neutrality by 2030. In other cities, it may be necessary for the mayor to take that step to be backed by a council resolution. We leave that up to you. What we're not asking you to do at this point is to come with a fully worked out plan, or a fully worked out plan for citizens engagement, or a fully worked out plan for investment. All that can come later in the Climate City contracts.
Thank you, Matthew. Actually, the chat is burning, and thank you, Muriel, to support me in asking questions from the chat. I am also monitoring the hands raised, and I can see one from Thomas Jacob from the city of Hamburg. I'm happy to give him the floor. So
that's fine. So just before you do come in, if I could also suggest, Vibke, if you, rather than sitting listening to me blathering on, if you can pick off some of the questions in the chat and answer them direct, that might be also very efficient as well. But at any event, please jump in if you'd like to add or take away anything that I've said. Over to our friends from Hamburg. Nice to hear you.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you for the presentation. And we are just discussing with pros and cons for several partners and organizations in the city. And for me, it's a question, if we have already well-justified plans, how can we achieve climate neutrality maybe later than 2030? Due to our knowledge that many planning procedures will take some time. We cannot accelerate some things to build a new waste collection facility, and it cannot be finished before 2030, or you build some infrastructure. Some elements are outside the responsibility of the city, like the permission of diesel-driven cars or ships from China coming into our ports. So can you give me an aid and help to answer these questions? Why should we apply for being earlier if I know exactly I cannot achieve this by legal limits, time limits, financial limits, or by just responsibility limits? And this is really something, well, I try to answer, let's try to be better. That's okay. but I know I will not achieve this climate neutrality, as it was from the purists always mentioned, in 2030 because of the construction time and the legal planning time for new facility will take more than the next 8 years. Then I can say, okay, we will probably reach it by 2035, but to apply for 2030, that will be a little bit like the wrong title for our application, or what is it?
Understand the point. Nice to see you again, Thomas. And it's a good chance to continue the discussions we had when I was in Hamburg. It seems like a long time ago now. Look, first thing, we're not asking cities to kind of wink and take a cynical approach and say, you know, we have the ambition to achieve this if we know we can't. The credibility of your city in terms of getting to climate neutrality, your political credibility, the credibility of the mission is part of that. So if you're very, very clear that you can't achieve that, then maybe this mission isn't for you. That said, a number of cities are using the mission to try to accelerate their plans. There's a number of cities who were previously on 2040 or on 2035 have said, okay, we think looking at the mission, we can use this to accelerate our plans and to catch up over time. And on that basis, even if we don't yet have a plan which is all ready to go for 2030, but we take our existing plans and we're going to work on that with the mission platform to get there by 2030. That for me is fully legitimate. There may also be things which you know you can't achieve. Hamburg, of course, is a port city, and it may be that you say we can't do it for the port, and so we'll exclude it for the port. The point you make about waste is an interesting one, because that would imply that you wouldn't be able to do you wouldn't be able to get any of your waste to climate neutrality by 2030. That's maybe a bit trickier. But if in doubt, the answer is, I think you spell it all out in the call, and we'll have a dialogue. And the last point will be, and that dialogue will be crucial on an ongoing basis for everyone involved in this. We will end up, I'm sure, with at least 100 climate neutral cities, and we will continue to discuss and exchange with cities that are not in that program. Because remember our second objective, we're trying to lay the groundwork for all cities to get there by 2050. And so to have an open platform approach, which is very much the plan of the consortium, and we're encouraging them to take that approach, it means that the cities that are not in the mission can also learn and benefit from their shared experiences. There will be, I'm sure, formal and informal twinning arrangements between cities inside the mission and from cities inside the mission with cities outside the mission. And this learning is a crucial thing. So I'm sorry, that was a long way of saying, we know that there are a number of cities wrestling with this and wrestling with this dilemma. My advice is, if in doubt, go ahead and fill out the call for expression of interest, be very explicit about what you can and cannot do, and the extent to which perhaps you may be able to accelerate and catch up over the decade, and then we'll take it from there. That's the only, I think, honest advice I can give. There's a linked question which maybe I could take now from Ralph Bermich about the deadline. I have great sympathy with this. We are very understanding about the problem. We actually looked at seeing if the deadline could be slightly later, and it would have meant a big delay in the mission because of the involvement of the appraising officials group that we're using from Synergies, who are only available in February. So to that end, we spent a lot of time trying to make the questionnaire as usable as possible. And as much as possible, there are closed questions which you can answer yes, no, and if you answer no, then you can skip on to the next section. We've really done our best to make it a usable questionnaire, but I regret to say no, I'm sorry, the deadline is pretty much fixed in the calendar and we're not able to change that.
Okay, thanks. We have a question from Philippe. I was going to Annemie, but she gets an answer from Wiebke herself, I notice. Philippe has not received an answer yet. He asks a very practical question. In the questionnaire, you have to fill in measures, then initiatives, and after interventions in 5 areas. what are the differences between these categories? What is expected and how at the end will you select with all those informations?
I'm going to call a friend here. I mean, I've struggled sometimes with this when we looked at the questionnaire. Vibke, are you able to give a succinct and clear explanation on this, and so I don't bolt it up? Measures, initiatives, and interventions.
Yes, I mean, the different areas, depending on different angles that we look at the city's current position in terms of its journey towards climate neutrality. And so what we're really looking for is information, what you have at the moment. So there's no need at this stage to start a new study or to invent new things or to come up with new consultations at this stage, for example. But we're asking for the information that you already have in coming from different angles. So then the initiatives, measures are, for example, what the measures are that your city has taken in the policy measures, the concrete activities that you have carried out. And I would maybe recommend that you have a look at the webinar that we did a few days ago. So we did 3 of them, a series of 3, and those really go individually through the different sections of the questionnaire, and we've gone along and explained a lot of different questions about these, what exactly is meant with individual questions.
Vibke, just an even more practical question to you on that. Do we know when the other 2 recordings for the webinars are going to be posted online? Because one of them
is already online. I posted in the chat the website where we will also publish the 3rd one. So the first 2 are available, and the 3rd one will come very soon. I'll post the link now.
But I do recall when we worked on the questionnaire, we tried to give as much help text to explain what the differences are between measures and initiatives and interventions. I do recognize that's potentially complicated, but it's as Vibke implied, we're trying to just gather as much relevant information about what you've done in the past, what your plans are to change, and what you might then do in the future. Again, remembering it's not a beauty contest, we're just trying to make sure we get as much information as possible so we can pick the right group of 100 cities.
Okay, then maybe we can go to the question of Tanya. She asks, the mission strongly relies on pilot innovation projects with a time range of 4 years. Will cities receive aid to upscale the projects after this time?
It's not envisaged at this stage. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't actually see the question. So,
it's at 1533, Tanya Marquez.
Oh yeah, fine, got it. It's not envisaged at this stage, but please remember that the whole Horizon Europe program is a rolling one. So there will be a missions work program. It's just been finalized and published as of 2 days ago. And for example, we will be launching calls next year on urban mobility and on positive energy districts. And these will be calls which all cities, in fact, can join under the normal Horizon Europe rules. And there may well then be follow-up projects that we launch in the rolling program of Horizon Europe. And the cities would thereby receive aid to upscale the projects on these bases. And again, the capacity of different projects to be replicated, to be upscaled and applied across the city, that's in itself often qualifying as an innovative measure. So we think there'll be projects galore flowing to support the cities involved in this mission. And last but not least, if you're in the mission under the auspices of the mission platform, there will be these deep demonstrators. So we'll have to see, in fact, in practical terms, how the city is going through this program as the mission platform develops its work, supports the ongoing work of cities in these processes. That was a long way of saying I can't be very precise at this stage how it's going to work, but please remember how Horizon Europe, particularly working through the mission, is going to be a rather flexible and open instrument to be used by the cities, by everyone involved over the next 7 years.
Thank you. I can see a hand raised from Filippa Borgström, sorry for the pronunciation, and then another one from Henrik. So I would give the floor to Filippa first. Please, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Sophia. The pronunciation was excellent.
Hi, Filippa.
Hi. So I'm in Sweden from the network Klimatkommunerna, and I think I actually got a first answer in the chat from a colleague of yours, Matthew. But we just wanted to say that we've been working for quite a long time with supporting Swedish cities in the transition, and we have a lot of material and experience and examples that we would like to contribute with in different ways. And we have recently launched a larger inspirational and educational material just the other week, showing some key parts of the transition. So it would be really fun to contribute in some way. So I'm just maybe looking for a name of a person to get a first contact with.
Well, you're already in touch with Viable Cities. I'm sure you know Olga, and I'm sure that she would be very happy. I mean, I can't speak to her, but to distribute material. But going back to what I said about the mission platform being very much an open source thing, they're also open for inputs as well as outputs. Thomas Ozdoba, who is the coordinator of the mission platform, he works at the EIT Climate Kick, and I'm sure we could post his details in the chat, has signaled to me several times that different organizations, including private sector organizations, who wish to post something on the Net Zero Cities website, say these are services that we're offering. He's very open to that. I suspect he'll want to do some quality control, but the whole idea is that we don't have a monopoly of wisdom by any means. Even the consortium doesn't have a monopoly of wisdom, and we're open to find new channels for people to use.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry, just 1 second. Matthew, would you like to have the presentation on, or would you prefer to see all the faces of participants?
I think seeing the faces would be a lot nicer than seeing my horrible.
Okay, because I understood you wanted it on again. So
sorry, didn't my mistake.
Yeah.
By that.
Okay, so Muriel, I'll give you the floor, and then we collect the other question from Henrik.
Okay.
Hi, Matthew. Thanks for the possibility to hear the interesting discussion and to talking to you again.
Hi, Henrik.
I would like to ask you as to whether you could be a little bit more concrete what we can expect from further Horizon calls. That would be part A of my question, and part B, because for us it's very, very important to know what's in a certain sense. So what we can drive from there, how we can use the support we can get from the Commission and from the EU institutions in order to foster our plans. One thing, the other thing is, apart from Horizon, would there be any other benefits as to whether or we can expect from other programs or other lines, other initiatives from the Commission that do not be part of Horizon, but pay or help in the same sense, in the sense of becoming climate neutral. Thank you so much.
Understood. Very quickly on those two questions. Hi, Henrik. Nice to see you. A double dose from Hamburg. In terms of the development of Horizon Europe for the missions program, we've only got to Horizon at this stage until the 2023 period. But we will, at a certain point, unveil our plans for the next 4 years, and I can't speak to those yet. For 2023, we'll be putting more money down on what I'm calling Mission Platform 2.0. I mentioned that the existing mission platform is only going to be able to cater immediately for the first 25 to 30 cities out of the 100, and therefore an additional 80 million euros or so will be spent on a new version of the mission platform, with no guarantee that the existing consortium will get it. Of course, they can apply for it, but they're not guaranteed to get it. And they will be taking forward the work for the next group of cities. So that'll be a large chunk of the 2023 work program, plus ongoing research and innovation programs. And the third thing we'll be putting money into is things like financial advisory, putting money into the EIB to support Eleanor and other projects which cities will be coming forward with under their Climate City contracts. Just quickly, before I give you the floor back, Henrik, on structural, on other programs, this goes to the thing I mentioned about the mission label, and that we believe that once cities have got their Climate City contracts completed and they have their mission label, they'll be able to use this very effectively to gain improved access to structural funds, to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and other European funds like the CEF, and living in the EU, precisely on the basis they've got this very clear commitments that they've set out under the mission label. I hope that answers your two questions.
May I come back to the first?
Quickly,
so that will be 80 million additional money to the 360, or as part from the
part of the 360.
Okay, so the 360 will be the whole amount that you will be able to
for the first 3
for the
years.
first until
then,
2020.
Yeah. And then we hope to get another sizable allocation for the remaining parts of the period.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have a question by LA. It's at 1533. That was not answered yet, I think. He or she asks, for cities with heavy industries, can they include the research and innovation projects conducted by the companies that the cities don't conduct themselves, but in which the cities are facilitators?
Absolutely. And I mean, we are strongly encouraging cities to come forward with the projects conducted by universities, research establishments, private sector partners. This is absolutely the spirit of the mission. And indeed, you know, some people say, oh, how am I going to do this? Because I've got all this heavy industry inside my city boundaries. And I'm exactly as you just say, some of those, the answers lie from the industrial partners themselves as to how they are themselves decarbonizing. So the answer to that question is yes.
And I think then we have no more questions in the chat, unless somebody asked a question and we overlooked it. Please present yourself, maybe with a hand.
We've worn them out.
Well, we've had a lot of questions, so that's good.
We have a hand raise from Borislava Spasova. I hope I pronounced it correctly. You can go, Borislava.
Hi, Borislava.
Hello, I'm from the city of Smolensk in Bulgaria. And since we were kind of wondering how exactly flexible are the conditions for entering, because our population is a bit lower than 50,000, but we also don't fall into those countries who have major cities than less than 100,000. So that was basically the question, should we even apply?
Well, my cheeky question is, how many thousands are you below the threshold?
It's 35,000 population of the city.
That sounds like quite a reach. I'm sorry, I'm not telling this in a politically incorrect way, but one city said that they were planning to open a refugee center so they could get their numbers up above 50,000, which I thought was an innovative way of joining the mission. It's tricky, and I think if you're really below the threshold, I'm sorry, you may need to be one of what I call our fellow travelers, that the cities that are joining the mission from the side. The other thing you might do is look at a neighboring city, or particularly if it's a contiguous city right next door that you can join forces with. We are actually not encouraging cities to submit joint bids on this basis because it tends to weaken this sort of the political commitment. I, as a mayor, am taking this commitment for the city in the contract, and it's more complicated if there's another city joining next door. But for example, if you shared the same transportation networks or the same energy providers or the energy grid, there might be the basis for joining up on that basis. But otherwise, it might be, thank you very much for your interest and sorry.
We just wanted to ask, thank you.
Okay, then I think it would be good to go to Jana's question first. Now, will the label only ease access to Horizon Europe funds, or will other programs like LIFE or Interreg take into account this label as well?
That's very much our intention, and we need to go through that with all the colleagues in the Commission and make sure that the wording of the label is correct, but that would be our intention, yes.
Okay. Sophia, you have a question?
Actually, I do. I have one from City Coordinators Group, but before we go there, I see a question from Maxime that maybe I can read in the chat.
Sure.
That is, would it be possible to find information after the selection about all cities who will apply to the call, or only a list of 100 cities that will be selected will be available? Could be interested to have a list cities with an ambition.
It's a good, it's a new question for me, that. I mean, I've been asked if we can make publicly available, for example, the cities that have pre-registered, and my answer to that has been no. Unless cities are happy for it to be known that they pre-registered, I think we should respect their privacy and their confidentiality. It's a question we'll have to consider. I'm certain that we will announce the 100 cities. I think that would be essential in terms of transparency. As to whether or not we are able to announce all of those who applied, I suspect what we'd have to do is ask the cities involved whether they're ready for that to be made known. Might not be something they want to be made known, and so we need to be a little bit tricky, a bit careful about avoiding doing things that upset people, and they might already be upset if they're not included in the 100. So we'll have to figure our way out on that.
And there's a question by Francisca as well, a more practical question with regard to the expression of interest. In a previous webinar, it was mentioned that letters of support from local stakeholders are not necessary. I do think, though, that it would be beneficial to include them in order to show the extent of our preparedness and local commitment with regard to the mission. Is there a possibility to still include them, letters of support?
I think so. I'm pretty sure, Wiebke, that there's a way of doing that. Or have we tried to exclude that possibility?
No, not at all. No, indeed, they're not required as such. So in the section about stakeholders, you won't find an option to upload a document, but you're very welcome to do upload them. But to do that, please, in the eligibility section, where you also upload the letter of support, I mean, the declaration or the letter from your city's representative. So that's at the very beginning of the questionnaire.
Okay, then there's, go ahead, Sophia.
Thank you. I think I would give the floor to Roel, who has his hand raised.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Matthew and Wiebke, to take the time to present this and answer all these wide questions. I have a bit more of an open question that relates to the involvement of national governments. This has been coming up more often. That especially if I talk for the Dutch cities, we have a great connection to the national government. They play an important role in our own plans, and we would like to have them involved in this program as well. So I was wondering, since you published this, the EC mission, and now has there been developments with regards to the involvement of national governments, like maybe emergent examples that you think like, hey, this is how we would like to see as the European Commission that national governments are involved. Some things that I could possibly bring with our conversations with our national governments to be inspired about how we could collaborate in this multi-level way.
Thank you very much. No, I can confirm that the strong interest and support from your government. I've had conversations with them at senior official level, and that's very, very welcome. I answered the question that they put to me, which is, are they required to be choosing or prioritizing between the cities? And I said to them politely, no, that's not required of them. And I think puts national governments in a very difficult position, in fact. So we're asking cities to come forward, and obviously for them to be supported by their national governments in that, but they're not involved in the selection processes. You're lucky to have, I think, a good relationship with your national government. Some cities have said that they've are having much more difficult relationships with their member states. And it's also for that reason that we're not requiring that cities co-sign their contracts with national governments, because in some cases it could mean that they were vetoed from participating or blocked off in an unfair way. And we are trying to avoid that as well. So it's a delicate thing, but in my experience, the cities that are really be able to push forward are those that are benefiting from these positive experiences and shared energy coming from the national levels. And why not? Because if you're a national government and you see a big city like Utrecht saying, we're going to go for 100% climate neutrality by 2030, that's a big chunk of your national target. So I'm hoping that we're going to get this positive dynamic, and member states will see that cities are doing a large part of their jobs for them. Last point, we have been to the ambassadors of all the member states here. We've had a very successful and supportive presentation to them. We're also working at lower levels in the council with all the working groups. I've made a presentation to the research working group. I'm going to make one onto the energy work, to the transport working group. And I'm ready to do this because we're going to need these multiple networks of support for cities involved in this project.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you very much, and look forward to your application, Rob. I see a question from from KB, from Christina.
Yes, that was the next we were going to mention. Christina at 1602. Following Francisca's question, is there a possibility to add more free text explaining the status of the city, what we aim for, etc.? I am aware there is a section with 4,000 character limit.
Well, I think the answer to that one is please don't write a book or a novel about it. What I don't know, maybe Vibke, you can tell us, is does the 4,000 character limit cut off? So you physically can't enter more than 4,000 characters?
Yes, it does, and that's indeed the important thing is that you focus on the essentials in this free text. So because we will have independent experts assessing the expressions of interest, and we would like them to be able to identify very quickly what the essentials of each city's situation are. But you can upload additional documents. So in this section that I mentioned before, under eligibility, where you're uploading the letter or declaration, you can upload additional documents, each with, I think, with a maximum size of something like 5 MB, but that is not limited. So you can upload several additional documents. Just make sure that you make it very clear what is the essential information of your bid.
So she's given you the crafty ways around it.
Yes.
You'll regret that, Vibke. There's a good question from Leah.
Can we have Annemie first? She's been there a while. I was asking at 1602, Annemie Wiekman, she asks 2 questions actually. Certain cities, countries have no access to structural funds, e.g. Norway. Are there alternatives to fund large-scale infrastructure investments? That's the first question. Maybe answer that first, and then we go to the second one of Annemie.
That's a big question. And indeed, we are conscious that is interest, and it's very welcome, of cities coming from what we call under Horizon Europe associated countries like Norway. And we've spelled out some very careful language in the frequently asked questions on this, that whilst we welcome expressions of interest from associated countries, because you won't have access to structural funds under the mission label or to recovery and resilience funds, we're looking for cities coming from associated countries or countries which are still negotiating their associated agreements to demonstrate how they're going to make up that shortfall, and to demonstrate how then they're not going to need those additional elements that could be provided from inside EU funding programs. Don't panic about that, because as in the second part of your question about alternatives to funding large-scale infrastructure elements, every city, including from those in the European Union, are going to need to fund a large part of this from private finance sources. And you would still be eligible for the mission label, proving you've got a bona fide, quote unquote, certified plan for climate neutrality. And you'd be able to use that as every other city in the mission to be able to attract private sector investments, and you get the advice from the mission platform as to how to do that. So it's a little bit more complicated, I think, for cities coming from associated countries, and in a way, no apology, because we do need to focus first and foremost on the cities coming from the European Union. But Horizon Europe is an instrument that's open to associated countries, and we're keen to make sure that that is also available to you. Shall I go to the second part?
Yes,
Meryl, read it out.
The second part is, will the city's mission help to clear regulatory barriers at EU level and towards member state AC? I'm not sure what that is. E.g. energy, spatial planning to reach climate neutrality.
I think that's associated countries.
Yes, of course.
No, it's a great question. And my answer to that is, I wish I had magic powers by virtue of the mission, be able to bounce up to member states and say, you know, this terrible regulatory regime that you have here, which is preventing my cities doing this job, you need to change that. And believe me, I will try that. I think we need to be realistic about how much power we're actually going to have from within the mission to get those changes made. But we will be working, of course, with the normal European processes, the European semester processes, the processes of linking reforms, as we did in the Recovery and Resilience Facility, to the access to investments. And hopefully we can together draw very clear lessons for member states or other, could be regional impediments to cities, to make sure that they understand that these are impediments to cities doing the right thing, and again, delivering the climate neutrality for the rest of the member states. And we're always interested to hear them, and we always do everything we can to try to reduce those barriers.
Okay, then we have a question by Leah. She asks at 1606, if I understand correctly, the mission platform will only support around 30 cities in the first years. What does that mean for the 70 remaining selected cities? Does it change the timeline for them?
Help is on its way. Hold on, held in there. So this is because the money available for the mission platform right now is only, we think it's only sufficient to start the work with about 25 to 30. But as I mentioned earlier in relation to the question from Henrik from Hamburg, the mission platform 2.0 will come into effect by the end of 2022. So it's going to be a short delay for the cities before they're fully engaged in the process of co-creating the Climate City contracts. There'll be full sharing of information in the meantime. And in practical terms, it's going to give you a few more months to get your thinking in order. It might even be a benefit to some cities to say, you know, we're gonna let's take a few months to get our thinking together so that we can hit the ground running at the end of the year under Mission Platform 2.0. So no discrimination in terms of access to the same level of services and funding support. And regretfully, I say to you, no, it doesn't change the timeline. You can't have a bit longer.
Then the next question is by Jana. She asks at 1608, the covenant of mayors seems very important in this mission. Would it be a problem if a city has left this covenant, even if that wasn't the decision of the actual mayor, but one taken by the previous majority? But I think she means mayor. Yeah.
Not at all. It's not a problem. The covenant of mayors is very important to us. We're working closely with them, but being part of the covenant of mayors or having a CCAP is not a prior requirement to participate in this mission.
Okay.
I was
and
short.
Then,
how about that?
Sorry?
I was short in my answer for one.
Okay, very concrete indeed. The next question is from Laura at 1609. She asks, what about the confidentiality of the research and innovation projects led by the industries? Is it okay to include the projects in the expression of interest, but not communicate about it at the beginning in the exchange of experiences, if hopefully we are selected?
I think that's fine. I'm looking to Vibke to contradict me. I mean, we are regarding each city's expression of interest as private, confidential, from the city to us. So we urge you to be as full as possible in explaining what the R&I projects are. And we're not going to be requiring you to communicate or put anything out in the public domain unless you're ready for it. Is that right, Vibke? Yeah.
Okay, then we have a question by Philippe, but that maybe we can keep for a bit last. I think you had a question, Sophia. We don't have any in the chat, I believe, left. But you had one from the city coordinators group, I believe.
Yeah, there was a question regarding what if you receive, like, more cities will ask to become climate neutral by 2030. Can you have more than 100 cities that decide to sign this climate city contract?
Well, this is what I call the problem of success. And I don't want to jinx myself by saying, assuming that's likely. It is very encouraging to see how many cities are coming forward now. I'll answer that in a number of ways. Firstly, we're saying around 100 cities. It might end up being a few more than 100, or it might end up being a few less. So there's no magic in the 100. There's nothing to prevent a city signing entirely independently of the mission its own climate city contract to say this is what we're doing. And I hope that the open access approach of the mission and the mission platform would give a city a lot of tools to enable it to do that. So that's the first point. I think that we are hoping not to say no in a door closing, slamming the door in your face kind of way to any city which comes forward in a duly motivated and qualifying way to join the mission. And we're going to try to find ways to stay in touch with all cities in that situation in the event that we have, I don't know, 200, 250 cities coming forward. The second point I would make is, and here's where I would turn to you, in the event that we do have this big success on our hands and a lot more cities wanting to do this than we have resources for it, you need to help me make the case to the Commission to increase the level of resources so we can expand the program, whether it's in, whether it's next year or the year after, or if it really takes off, to expand the program after, say, 2025, when cities from outside see, I hope, the manifold benefits to being part of the mission and the benefits of being one of the first movers towards climate neutrality, and we can expand the program. But again, I don't want to jinx myself or ourselves about that success, but that will be a nice problem to have. It'll prove we're doing the right thing with this mission, and we'll do everything in our power to expand it if that turns out to be the case.
Thank you, Matthew. And I will just connect, because you just said something that turned on the light in my head. So what about, how are you gonna plan to be in contact with those cities that haven't been selected? So with which tools concretely?
I don't know, is the short answer. We will need to figure that out as to how much we can do through the mission platform, which again, as I said, is planning to be an open access platform for as much of its activities as possible. I think it's a slightly hypothetical question. If we're talking about 10 to 20 cities that are, disappointed and keen to move forward with us, that will be one thing. If we're talking about 100 cities, it would depend on if it's 100 big cities. I mean, it's too early, I think, for us to say. But it is a strong commitment on our side to leave no one behind in this whole process.
Thank you.
Okay, then there is the question by Roberto at 1614. Roberto asks, you mentioned the need of involving the private sector, and I fully agree with you for identifying necessary resources towards neutrality. However, what is the foreseen size in terms of budget provided by the Commission for each city?
That's a great question. I mean, the mission is not, I'm afraid, a cash machine, and shouldn't be seen as such. When you look at the funding and financing necessary for a city to get to climate neutrality, there's a study which the mission board used, done by Material Economics, which estimated that for a city of an average population size of around 100,000, you can count roughly €1 billion to get there. And of course, if your city is of 1 million, you scale up in almost a linear way. So it's an expensive business, and all the European funds in existence, plus all the national funds, is not going to be enough in itself. And going back to what I said earlier, it'll be access to private funding and financing sources, which is going to be really crucial. So I urge cities not to think about this in terms of a budget or something they can count on. That said, cities will benefit from particularly being part of the deep demonstrators run by the mission platform. The mission platform sees its role as actually launching projects of, quite extensive projects, and maybe of €1 million, €2 million, in which cities will be able to participate, and of course would therefore get direct access to those funds, or for their universities or local research establishments. And once again, we hope then that by using the mission label, that cities will have access, and I can't put a number on it, I'm afraid, to better access to internal Commission funds, like structural funds, like the Recovery and Resilience Facility, like the Connecting Europe Facility, and so on. So I can't, that was a long way of saying I can't give you a number about what we would be able to provide as the European Commission for each city. But what we would be guaranteeing is working with you every step of the way, and helping you identify funding sources for each of the issues that you uncover in terms of reaching climate neutrality.
Okay, then we have one question from Laura, and then the last question, I think, from Philip. Laura's question is at 1618, and she asks, if we excluded a part of the city because we know it won't be carbon neutral by 2030, e.g. a port or an industrial zone, can we still list mitigation measures from the excluded parts?
Good question. I don't see any reason why not, because I think we will be pushing you. So let's say you're coming from Dublin, I think, you, Laura? I can't quite see in my screen.
Dunkirk.
Dublin, Dunkirk, nearly the same. So, you know, you might be saying then that we can't get our port. Good point. I know the port of Dunkirk well, because it wouldn't be carbon neutral by 2030. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be listing the mitigation measures from the excluded parts. Whether you can use them in a way to offset shortfalls elsewhere in the city sounds a bit tricky. My suggestion would be to be explicit about your plans to how to count those emissions in your expression of interest, or we can work it through when we get to the co-creation of the contract. But I think if, let's say you excluded 20% of the city, which wasn't able to be climate neutral, but then you use the emissions reductions in that to offset less than 100% emission reductions in the 80%, I think that would be probably kind of tricky in terms of emission counting. But be very explicit, and we'll see how we can work it through.
Okay, I see a hand raised by Tanya.
Hi, Tanya. I cycled through Oeiras this summer, so nice to see you.
Oh, I hope you had a wonderful day, stay there.
I had a lovely swim on your beaches.
Oh, we have really high quality beaches over here. So I'm happy that you stayed here. Our question was following Laura's question. It's because we are a city near the capital, and we do have lots of emissions that are caused by crossing transportation. We do have lots of cars that buy their fuel on our territory, but they don't do the emissions here. But it's very hard to calculate how much emissions it's actually due to Oeiras. So that's our main problem. If we work with you in a way to figure out how can we actually count the emissions that are referred about of our territory, and make it the count of all the emissions that are not related to our territory to another territory. Is it that possible? For instance, not consider the crossing, you know, the crossing emissions. Is that possible or not?
That's a great point. I think it's a very relevant issue, and
yes,
I mean, just to take the example, if you look at it from the perspective of, say, Lisbon and a city and cars coming from Oeiras into Lisbon, how do you count those emissions? How do you count emissions in cars going back, or indeed coming from Cascais, crossing Oeiras, going to Lisbon? I mean, all of these issues are relevant. To some extent, they should be classified as scope 3. In other words, emissions that are generated outside the city, but are used by city residents. I think that we have to take a very careful look at these things. It certainly, for me, wouldn't be an excluding factor to say that we are struggling to get to full climate neutrality, because I think a lot of that would be classified as scope 3 emissions from outside. But I couldn't say for sure until we looked at the numbers. My suggestion, as so often, would be come forward with the expression of interest, set out the problem, and we'll take a careful look at it. Remember that this whole mission is about innovation and trying to understand and unpack different learning experiences so we can apply rules. So that we can learn for it in the future. This particular problem you have, I suspect it's not going to be unique. but there might be a neat way of looking at it. I don't think from what you've said, it's an excluding factor in terms of joining the mission.
Okay, then we got one more question. It's the very last question we'll take, and then we'll go to Philippe's last question because we're running out of time. The last question is asked by Dana at 1622. What is a more important criterion for the success of the whole program? The number of climate neutral cities or the general progress made, which would be more inclusive for cities that are less prepared?
What a difficult question, Dana, from the lovely city of Timișoara, and give my best to your mayor. Well, I mean, I'm a bureaucrat. I'm trying to achieve an explicit goal, which is to deliver the 100 climate neutral cities. At the same time, we're also trying to prepare the ground and to help all cities get there. And you know, I think that's the second part of your question, the general progress made to be more inclusive for the cities that are less prepared. So I'm trying to achieve both of those things. But also going back to the diversity point, if we took just cities from Scandinavia, shall we say, from Sweden and Finland and Denmark and the Netherlands, who have been working on these for a number of years, the actual benefits in terms of the European Green Deal and getting us closer to climate neutrality as a continent would be much less than if we took big southern cities that maybe have prepared less and have got bigger problems in terms of getting to climate neutrality, which is another reason why we want that diversity. We want to have cities of all sorts of levels of preparation and complexity and size. I'm not going to answer your question about which is more important because we need both, but we really do need both.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for this marathon answering questions.
It's probably much worse for you than for me.
Well, no, it's great. It's going very well, I think, together. There is the last question or I saved one question for the last. It's from Philippe for now. And he asks us 1559 a while ago, but it's an interesting last question. The 1 million question, what should we do to be selected?
Send me a large check payable to my bank account. No, that's not true. I deny that. Look, be honest and straightforward in the expression of interest. I really mean what I say in that it's not a beauty contest. If you spell out your problems in a very interesting way, I think you're going to make it much more likely that we take you on board, because again, we want to have this as a learning experience. I wish I knew the secret formula. I guess the only ultimately secret formula would be to make sure that you're the only city from your member state that applies, which meets the qualifying criteria, which I suspect would make it very difficult for us to turn you down. But I'm sorry, I don't have a magic answer to your question.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you a lot. And I think we also came to the end of our meeting today. I think it was a great success. At some point we had 95 participants, and thank you a lot for accepting this invitation again. And I don't know, would you like to share anything else at the end? I think you spoke a lot already.
Well, I think I've worn us all out collectively with being too long, and I apologize for that.
No.
Thank you very, very much, is really what I want to say. I think I can speak for Vibke. We've done a number of these different calls, and each time I'm amazed at getting a different question which we hadn't thought about. I am truly humbled by the amount of interest there is and the nerve which I think we've touched. And I really hope that we can make a great success out of this mission together, whether it's within this group of 100 or in a bigger, more extended community. It is very exciting. It proves the general point that so many of us have been making, that cities are ready to lead on this. And we're providing, I think, with this mission, a mechanism by which you can exercise that leadership and really make a difference. I stop there. I wish you all a holiday of warmness and resonance with your friends and your family. And we're looking forward to seeing your expressions of interest, hungrily waiting to see them in January.
Thank you a lot. Thank you, Matthew. And before everybody else leave, I would like to give a very final announcement. So the next appointment for the city coordinators group together with the TG replication will be on the 27th of January. We will talk about systemic change of governance, a very important topic for all the cities in our group. And so we will share the invitation very soon. Thank you again, Matthew, for your
time. Wonderful group you've got here, Sophia, and thank you for the wonderful questions, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice holiday, hopefully.
Thank you both. Thanks, Muriel. Thanks, Vivka.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Great work, Sophia and Muriel. Very
Thanks.
nicely moderated this session.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roel. I'm happy. I think it was a great success.
I think so too. Yeah, I had to get into it a little bit in the beginning, but I think after a few minutes with the chat, we did very good.
I stupidly mistaked the starting point for 3:30. So was there a presentation at the start, or was it just?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will share it with the participants I have the contact of, and therefore TG replication and all the BOC for sure, and the city coordinators group. Okay.
Yeah. And will you save the chat, because the chat was really valuable?
Yes,
I don't know how to do it, but
yeah, I will
great.
also post the recording on YouTube. But I mean, I will ask 20 Communication to do that.
All right. Okay. And did we make
Have
some
a
kind of a report or
beautiful-
something from this meeting, or how?
Wait a second, I will stop the music.
Oh.
Sorry, I thought it was a nice goodbye.
Oh yes, sorry.
No.
There was no music here.
I didn't hear neither.
Oh,
Hey.
sorry, I didn't. Probably it didn't work. The sharing of the music. Sorry.
It was a good idea actually, but on the other hand, it's nice to have a few words after.
Yeah.
No, my only question was, will there be a report of some sort? Because it's been very interesting, and I think it could also be feeding into the Q&A that's on the website. But maybe Wiebke does that already. I don't know. I was wondering about that.
To be honest, I think I would struggle to, because like I was too concentrated to let people in. So many people joined during the meeting, and I could not take minutes.
No, we'd have to look it back all the way, and somebody has to take notes.
The session, and I don't know if this will be possible before Christmas, to be honest. But for sure, we will share the link of the YouTube recording with everyone, and we will share the presentation. And maybe that will be also posted on Scale website and the Smart City Marketplace. We can also, I wonder if we can do a recap of the minutes.
Yeah, or maybe Wiebke, I don't know who she is, but maybe she's in the position to do this, because it can be quite time consuming. And I can imagine the person who makes the Q&A on the website also analyzes this to see what they can add.
Yeah, I will definitely share also with them the result, the chat, and also because it was mainly questions. We didn't type any answer in the chat.
No, I had no time either to do that. I started, but it was completely impossible to do that. So yeah, I wish I could, but no. All right. Yeah, maybe we should ask them if they, well, or not ask them. They will probably pick it up or not, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that some of the questions that were asked were new for them as well. So they will also probably someone took note of them, but maybe we will share for sure their recording.
Yeah. Okay. Well, super done, I think. Sophia, wonderful moderation, I think, from beginning to end. You look always very bright and happy, which is great.
Thank you.
I think that's a great framework, how do you say, for this kind of meeting, to have that kind of lively presence. So great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Muriel. Thank you for your support a lot. Thank you, Roel, for asking questions. And thank you to all the other participants that are still here. I can see something in the chat, if I may, even if you did not write it in here. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's all registered, that's for sure, but it's not on paper or in written yet.
And
it can always be
let
done.
me stop the recording now.